Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our next session, which is on how businesses, small businesses, can achieve ISO 9001. Now, today, I'm really pleased because the roles are reversed, so I get to ask the questions rather than getting to answer them. So that should be interesting. So instead of Linda introducing me, I'm introducing Linda. So Linda Carrington has a background in industry and has been working on quality management systems for many years. Now works with our clients at Wessex Commercial to help them achieve and keep their ISO 9001. Now, if you have any questions, pop them in the comments and we'll try to answer them as we go, obviously, if they're not too difficult. And if they are, we might have to come back to you, but we will come back to you. So, Linda, welcome. And can you please tell us what we are going to cover today?
Thanks, Graham. And yeah, lovely to reverse the rules. I'm going to cover three main things today. I'm going to answer or tell you what ISO 9001 is, how you can get it, and importantly, we will look at the common pitfalls that small businesses face when trying to achieve the standards.
Okay. Before we go into discussing ISO 9001 in detail, my first question is why? Why should businesses go for the accreditation?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Graham. And it is the first thing that I ask clients: why do you want ISO 9001? My message is don't do it if you don't really want it. So the accreditation bodies would say get it to improve your business processes and improve your business. And I agree with them on that. But the real driver for the clients that I work with is if their customers are asking for it, or they expect it, or they need it to win new business.
Oh, that's interesting. Can you give me like an example of where you've worked with like a small business for one of those situations?
Yeah. So one of the clients that I work with wanted to move from more domestic projects into commercial work, and we put ISO 9001 in place to help them do that. And they've taken their turnover from £1 million business to a £4 million business in that process. So it, but it is important for that journey. But you do need to.
Yeah, there was a specific reason, and it's worked out well for that client because they've gone into the bigger contracts that and they are profitable as well, which helps. Yeah. And what kind of commitment do businesses need to make?
It is a commitment. You need to be serious about it. So there are three questions that I'd ask before you go down this route. The first thing is, do you want to grow your business and to increase your capacity? If you don't want to do that, don't worry about ISO 9001. Just keep doing what you're doing. But if you want to grow, that's one consideration. The second is, are you happy to be subject to that external scrutiny of your record keeping and your performance management? And the third thing really is, are you and your team ready to make some changes, not lots of changes necessarily, but some changes to the way that you do things? And actually, ISO 9001 gives you an opportunity to save money and time in your business as well. So it's worth doing from my point of view for those reasons too.
I think that's, to me, time and money is the two key things, and often time is critical. Yes. Anyway. So could you give us an example of where you've helped a business in that sort of scenario?
Yeah. So one of the clients that I'm working with, they didn't capture the decisions that they were making during the design review process. So that meant that by the time they got to manufacturing, they actually found that they were making the same mistakes twice. We've improved that process, and they're already seeing the benefits. They're capturing the learning that they had during that design process the first time, and not making the same mistake again.
Which, obviously, if you're making mistakes, not only is it the time, it's also not the time of the mistake, it's the time of capturing, making sure you understand this mistake, yes, correcting it, and then it's the trust after to say, are they going to make another mistake? So the more you put the right processes in, I always say, keep it simple, stupid.
And it's frustrating, in terms of if you've got manufacturing operations, for the people that actually work in the shop floor, really frustrating when the same thing happens more than once. So we've got to learn from the guys on the shop floor and capture that learning through the process.
Okay, no, that's good. And what actually is ISO 9001?
So I think you give it a number and it sounds scary, but it's an internationally recognised quality management standards, and it includes a whole range of requirements covering the customer journey and your product and service life cycle. You are expected to focus on customer satisfaction, and there is a process that they set out called plan, do, check, and act. So it's I think it's fairly straightforward.
Okay, well, you would obviously, because you're doing it. So,
Yeah.
but when I was involved, many years ago with QA systems, quality assurance systems, and they were very much like buy it off the shelf and you just followed it, which half the time the business actually didn't follow it.
Yeah.
It was just a tick box to get the accreditation. Is it
Yeah.
the same? Is it still very prescriptive?
It used to be, Graham, but it really isn't. The standard that we're working with at the moment adopts what they call risk-based thinking. And for me, that's something that business owners do daily. There's no, you can't be running a small business and not be doing that. But what it means is you have to define your own processes. You obviously make sure they cover the basic requirements set out in the standards, but you define your processes and you follow it. And you do have to have documented information as evidence of, to show that you're following the process.
And evidence to me is key, because most small businesses they do quite a good job, but they're not very good at documenting. That is, and it affects the whole business. So
yeah,
okay.
and I find just thinking, looking at my kind of commercial experience. I've worked on big projects with you, Graham, where it was really key for us to get the message out to the team that you have to have the paperwork in place to get paid. So ISO 9001 is a good process to help you with the commercial side of things as well.
Yeah, it's good for the commercial side to make sure that because if you've actually documented and you've got evidence you've done a piece of work, so it's good for payment. It's also good if there's a problem. Yes. So that you've actually followed a process and that's right, and is the problem with you, or if the problem is something that actually was an error, and you're making the same error, at least with the system, you can actually change it and make sure you rectify it and then get it right going forward.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, Linda, how do you actually go about getting, the accreditation ISO 9001?
Yeah, so the first step is to compare what you do now against the standards, and we call that a gap analysis. And then the second step is then to act to close that gap. And then thirdly, you need to be assessed. Now, I would say you need to go to a Ucas accredited body. So, for example, people like NQA or PSI, and they'll give you, all being well, they'll give you a 3-year certificate, and they'll do an annual surveillance visit in the intervening years.
Okay, and I would say, I'm sort of thinking about the insurance industry as well, that you've got to have something that's accredited. So you've got to have an accredited insurer. I've known in the past when I've been involved with companies and actually our insurance didn't meet it. We had to change the insurance. And it's the same with the QA, that you've actually got to have an accredited body. Otherwise, the company, especially if you're going for work, they might say, hang on a minute, I don't recognize that body, in which case you're back to square one. Okay.
Yeah. Ucas are appointed by the government and recognised in the UK for that purpose. You can get a non-Ucas ISO 9001 certificate, but if you're serious and particularly if you want to work with public, in the public sector or publicly funded projects, then you need to use a Ucas accredited body. And
I would reiterate that the trouble is that sometimes business don't realise it starts from the top. So if you're going, it may not be you that's going to the government body. You might be working for the next tier, the next one down, the next one down. You might be a subcontractor, but it's basically pushing all the way down. So yes, and it's ticking the box basically for that goes all the way up to the the government body. Okay, that's the theory. So how do you go about implementing a system?
So one of my messages today, Graham, is that you already have a system. So what your task is to document and improve it. And there are 4 ways you can do it. You mentioned off-the-shelf systems. You can still get a digital, you can download an off-the-shelf version, which will be largely paper-based when you actually implement it. You can use a digital compliance tool and capture all of your data on it. You can DIY it, so you can read the standards and do it yourself, or you can go down the consultant-supported route, and that's obviously what I do.
Yeah, okay, so that's what you do. So, sort of following on from that, let's just have a quick look at the consultant-supported route.
Yeah.
What does that actually look like? What's the what do you go through? What's your process?
So basically, what I do is I look at your existing system and help you tweak it. And when I talk about systems, it does sometimes include things like the IT. So I quite often see people just not using the tools that they've got, or in their business already to their full potential. So let me give you an example. I've worked with actually more than one client who had a customer satisfaction questionnaire on a Word document. And what they were finding is that, funnily enough, they email that off to their customers, don't get any replies, and then are like, help, how am I going to fulfill this requirement to monitor customer satisfaction? And all we've done to actually get them some proper feedback from customers is use their Office 365 to put in place an online form, and lo and behold, people actually fill in the form because it's quick and easy. So, people, as I say, people have a way of doing business. They've got the technology sometimes to do it, and it's just about using those systems better.
And it is, and obviously customer client expectation, everybody's expectations is much more, I want it now, I want it as simple as possible, I want to do things, I don't want to spend lots of time on anything, I haven't got the time.
And so the other part is, for me as well, is mobile friendly. People want things to be mobile friendly. So where I can see that one of our clients has got a tool that will allow them to do something in a mobile friendly way, that works for customers, it works for engineers out in the field, it works for people on the shop floor, manufacturing. It's just you increase your compliance and you get better data, meaningful data you can do something with.
Well, it's always saying is put yourself in the shoes of the person you want the information from. So go into their mindset, their perception, because it'd be totally different to you. I was reading something about a beach ball that, if you held up a beach ball, you would see 6 colors on it. You'd see 3 colors. The person on the other side will see 3 different colors. So you just got to remember, people are different. Okay. What are the most common pitfalls that you see?
So there are a few kind of biggies that come up with most of the clients that I work with. The first is that most small businesses don't audit their own systems, and you do need an internal audit at least once a year for ISO 9001. And that can be quite tricky because you need to find someone independent who's not actually doing the work that's being audited. But you can buy that in, and surprise, surprise, that's something that I do for several clients, is just to go in and audit their system for them. So that's the first thing that I see in most cases. The second one is, again, it's an issue for small businesses. They tend to be light on documented information. We've already mentioned it, but small businesses are often controlled by 1 or 2 people or families, and they talk to each other, but they don't write down their decisions or the actions that they're planning to take. So we have to put in place a management review process to record the big decisions, the risks that they've identified and the opportunities. And we also have to, when it comes to dealing with, for example, with suppliers, I know people go through a decision-making process in their minds or in conversation with a colleague, another director, for example. Again, we need to have documented information to show that you've evaluated your suppliers, how you've made that decision to use one organisation and not another. And I think the final thing I want to mention is, I think some people think they need a big fancy system. You don't even need a manual. You used to need a manual, but that requirement is gone. What you do need is something which is going to help you explain your system, partly to the auditor that comes in to check that you're meeting the requirements, and actually also it can be a good tool for discussion. So I think when we were chatting about this on Friday, quite often people say to me, oh, Linda, can you come in and help us get our documentation in place, document our system for us? Because as we said earlier, you've already got a system. You're in business, you're doing quite well, you're thinking about moving up to the next stage, and getting ISO 9001 in place to get access to those bigger customers. But what happens when we're documenting the system is people go, oh, actually, is that really the best way to do it? Could we do it a bit differently? And so it's a good tool. It's a good tool to get everybody thinking about, are we really doing this the most effective way possible?
And it's cutting costs and cutting time, basically, is what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And also, I'd just go back on that audit point of view. I know, because I've been involved with this, it's very hard to audit your own work.
Yes.
And people don't want to upset people, so if you're not careful, the audit will be just like, let's say, not done properly. To have someone come in, it's not going to, look and check that and do the audit for you before you get the accreditation body back, just to make sure that you're doing what you say you're doing, is very helpful. Because I see that most businesses are so busy that actually they leave the audit as well, and that's the one part they don't do. And then someone comes in and then it's like, oh, sorry, I was going to say sugar. The next, someone's coming in next week, we've got to get things sorted. And it's just a world. So actually having that, it's all part of the education, the process, but having someone independent is a lot easier. And it to be honest, I don't believe it costs that much to get someone in for like a day, compared to like trying to do it yourself, the time it would take you.
Yeah, exactly. And again, having a commercial background, I tend to look at things quite holistically, and I flag up with clients. If I spot things that I'm concerned about, I'll flag up. So, for example, again, if I see people without terms of business, clients that have got potentially open-ended liabilities if something goes wrong with the product that they're sending out the door, I flag that kind of thing up. And one of my clients has just put in place some standard terms of business, which won't solve all problems, but will help reduce some of the risks if they do have an issue in future. So I flag up those kind of things as well. And I think the other part, when we're talking about process improvement, one of the things that we're keen on here at West Sussex Graham, as you know, is automation. And I often go into businesses and see opportunities to automate things. And I think people get nervous about automating. But, I look at it as, why do something that, time consuming and laborious when you can divert that energy into something like, sales, customer service, something where you can add some value to your business.
I think it's just understanding it's automating automating the repeating, the things that are repeating all the time. Why are you recreating the wheel when it can easily just, like templates and things like that? It's so easy to automate some of these things and have everything there ready, so you don't have to think. It cuts, and people nowadays, with staff especially, and sort of the labour force, often they don't always think. There's the days where I used to think, and as you grow, you've got to make sure you've got the processes so that what you're thinking, actually, you're passing that knowledge down to the people below, and they're actually following the process that you want. So exactly. I think it's in my mindset, it can save time. It can actually make more profit because you can grow, but it also it sort of reduces your risk with what could really hurt you by actually understanding what you haven't got, and sort of like cutting out errors, etc.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so what should business owners do now?
So the first thing is to read the standards. There are only 20 pages once you flick past the preambles. So have a look at the standard itself. decide if there's a business case, and if you feel that there is, then get help to do a gap analysis and get an action plan in place, and then go for it. Take the steps that you need to take, and get your system ready for external audit.
Just on the top first one, the first point you said was like reading the standard.
Yeah.
As a business owner, sort of myself, spending 20 minutes reading, it's not what I'd be top of my priorities. Is that something you can help with, and just look at that and that, rather than my attention span can be gone.
Yeah, absolutely. The shortcut is to look for the documents. Look at the contents page. Yeah, it tells you the topics you need to cover. Scan through, do a search for documents and information. It will tell you what documents and information is that you'll need. I'll help translate it. That's probably the easy option.
Yeah. Very good. Okay, thanks, Linda. So if you are thinking about going for ISO 9001, Linda offers a free one-to-one meeting, whether it's virtual or on site, depends where you are.
Yeah.
But that is, if you contact Linda at wessexcommercial.com, which is on obviously the tab there. We are now taking a break for the summer. Next time we're going back and reversing the rows back. So unfortunately, I don't get to ask the questions. I've got to do the answers. And we'll be actually starting a 3-part session all about getting your business ready for sale. So we're talking about exit planning, whichever way of exit, but how long it takes. And it could take, you need to plan about it and get your business right. So the first part is the business health check, getting your business ready, then growth. And then we'll be talking about the actual processes of how you sell and the things to watch out for, etc. So the first of that, the business health check, is on Monday, the 11th of September at 12:30. And we look forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, have a great summer. Hope the sun shines wherever you are. And we'll see you again in September.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.